Hi everybody, Mike Beer here with the DRF race of the day for Sunday, June 26th. We're going to Belmont Park for the race of the day. Race number 8, a 6 furlong sprint. Older New York fillies and mares, state breds. They're going to go 6 furlongs on the main track here for a $100,000 purse. It's the Dancin Renee Stakes, field of 10. Here's that field right now. Scan that QR code that you see on your screen before we get started, and you can access the PPs for this race on your mobile device. And the PPs will also be available at the Race of the Day event page at DRF.com. Really good race here in this Dancin Renee. 10 fillies or mares entered. These are 4-year-olds and up. And there's just a lot of quality in this race. Several stakes winners in this field. A bunch of these horses coming into this race in really good form. Handicap's kind of wide open, but I do think that David Aragona nailed the proper morning line favorite in here, in number 7, Bank Sting. She's 2-1 on your morning line, and it's not to say that Bank Sting doesn't have some things working against her. I feel like perhaps the biggest hurdle that she might have to overcome here is that this is going to be her very first start in her career. She's 7 for 11 overall. She's been very, very good right from the start, but she's never been 6 furlongs. This is going to be her very first start over this distance. For the most part, they've kept her going 7 furlongs to a mile. Each of her last 3 starts, in fact, have all been 1-turn miles, all 3 starts, since a little bit of a layoff there in January. And listen, she's coming off of 2 losses also. This is a horse who wins a lot. And she has lost each of her last 2 starts, although the first of those was over a wet track in the Grade 2 Ruffian, where she was just in over her head. But listen, she's cutting back to 6 in here. It seems like she's tactical enough for that not to be a big deal for her. And it just feels like if she shows up and runs her really good race here, this field's going to have a tough time beating her. But there are reasons to be concerned at any kind of, short price on this horse, to be sure. We'll take a look at the Timeform US pace projector before we move on to the individual contenders. And Timeform US thinks this is going to be run at a fast pace. You can see the red bar there on the pace projector. Number 5, Queenarella is expected to show speed in here. I don't see why she wouldn't. This is a filly shipping in here from Finger Lakes on a 5-race winning streak. She's been facing much, much weaker horses, and she's not running races that are fast enough to really make her a contender in here. But listen, she's on a winning streak with a running style that has seen her go to the front in her races, and I don't see why they would change that now as they step her way up in class. Can she make the lead over a horse like the number 2, the Important One? I don't know, man. I feel like she probably can't, but we'll see how that all plays out. The Important One is a very fast horse early. We haven't seen her since early December in the Staten Island division of the New York Stallion Series, where she lost as the favorite that day, but she just got hooked up on a wicked pace in that race, and Bank Sting sat a perfect trip behind her and had no trouble overtaking her in the stretch. The Important One's very fast, and her dirt form overall, they spent most of her career trying to make her a turf horse, but since they've wound up on dirt last summer at Saratoga, her form's been excellent. She's run some fast races, and she's fast early. This pace might be fast, but I feel like if it is, they're going to be chasing the Important One in here. We'll see. Time Limit to 6 also has some speed. Starting off with the contenders down on the rail, Kept Waiting is number 1. For trainer Rob Falcone. This horse is good. Her recent form has been rock solid for Falcone. Her last 2 starts have come in graded stakes company, and those are just races that she's not going to be able to win. Although, listen, she ran fine 2 starts back in the distaff behind Glass Ceiling, who's in really good form. That was the race, of course, where search results just really failed to show up, and ran a very disappointing 3rd, and then came back with 2 much, much improved efforts after that. Last time we saw Kept Waiting, it was in the Vagrancy, a Grade 3 against Bella Sophia. A little bit of a steady early in that race, but that's just because they were trying to get her to settle a little bit off the pace. Overall, she got a fine trip in there. She took a run at the leaders around the turn. Those horses were just too good for her. This is the right class relief for her. The 6 furlong distance is no problem for this horse. Her form over the winter, especially once they switched her over to the grass, really, really good. She won 3 races in a row, got really, really good trips in those races. But she has shown in several of her wins that she is fine sitting in behind horses and waiting for room to run, and that's a trip that could be coming for her here in this race as she returns to New York bred company. This horse is definitely a contender in here, and if the pace is fast, it only helps her. The Important One is the 2, as we talked about. I think she's the fastest horse early. They tried to make her a turf horse for much of her career, and she had some success on that surface, but last summer at Saratoga in an allowance optional claiming event, she got reined off to the main track, stayed in, wired that field with a big 96 Beyer speed figure, and at that point I feel like her connections realized that they had to press on to dirt with her, and it's a good thing that they did. She won her next start very easily on the lead. They came back with this effort here that we'll look at right now, about 3 weeks later in the Iroquois, and wires this field. It's a wet track again that she handles. Just had no trouble making the early lead in this race, and you can see her coming into the stretch in complete control of this race, and she had plenty left when Lezcano asked her the question, and she just was never threatened in this race. It was a really nice performance, a very easy win. A couple of the horses that she defeated that day are back in this field. One start since then in that Staten Island division of the Stallion Series, and just got hooked up on a really, really fast pace that day. Didn't run terribly, but there was no way she could cope with going that fast early, especially over 7 furlongs, and she got really tired. This race, we'll see how fast the pace gets. If the pace is fast, obviously it works against her a little bit. But she's a dangerous horse fresh off the layoff for Steve Asmussen. The 3 is Secret Love. I'm a big Secret Love fan. She's 4 for 11 in her career. She's a good horse. I don't think she's good enough to beat a field like this one, assuming everyone shows up with their good race. Her dirt start, 2 starts back in an open allowance race, was a good performance. It was a wet sealed track, and she's fine over a surface like that. She got a really good trip in that race and won pretty easily. It wasn't the greatest field in the world, but she ran well in there. 82 by her this year, and that day was the career best for her. They tried to get the mile out of her in the critical eye last time. And she just didn't run that well. She got a perfectly good trip in that race. And I think she was maybe just found out a little bit in there. A stakes race against those kinds of horses, she just really wasn't competitive, even after pulling a pretty good trip in there. I do think cutting back to 6 helps her. I just don't know if she's good enough to beat this field, but I remain a big fan of hers, and I won't be surprised if she outruns her odds, and it feels like she could be a pretty good price in this race. The number 4 is Chasing Cara, another horse who has been showing speed in recent races. It's worked out okay for her, but she's been defeated by Kept Waiting. She's finished behind Time Limit. She was defeated by Secret Love 3 starts back, 2 starts back behind Snicket and Let Me Take This Call, who are going to be pretty big long shots in here. Her most recent start is a career best performance for her, but it was also a sloppy sealed track in a race rained off the turf. She was main track only in there, and she was just a clear speed in that field. Won pretty easily that day, and it was a good performance. Even a repeat of that's not going to be good enough. And, she had run, over 20 times prior to that and never run a race that even makes her close to competitive with this field. The number 5, Queenarella, we talked about, I guess she's going to show speed in here. Can't knock the recent form. It's the right time to bump her up in class here on a 5-race winning streak. But she's in very, very tough here, and she's a big price on the morning line. The 6 is Time Limit. This horse is, to me, a major contender race. She's another horse who has spent a good amount of time on turf, and listen, she handles that surface just fine. She's won a couple of races sprinting on the grass, but she's also been good on dirt, basically right from the start of her career. They finally started to get her back to dirt in the winter of 2020, 2021. They switched her back at Oaklawn in December of 2021, and she ran well that day. She was only second best in an open allowance race, but she earned an 88 by her. It was a good performance for her. 2 starts later, they were back to turf. This was in January of this year in the What a Summer, an open stakes race there at Laurel, going this distance. And here's the replay of that race. She ran very well in this race. Kept right up after the horse who wound up finishing 3rd. Just kept up after that horse's pace the entire way. Chased her around the turn. Would not give in through the stretch. Initially, you see it not making that much ground, but she stays really gamely, overpowers that horse late, clear to the wire. It was a good performance, another 88 buyer speed figure for her. Only managed 1 additional start there over the winter this year, over that sloppy track in the Broadway. Only second best to Kept Waiting that day. She's run okay over wet tracks before, but I don't necessarily feel like the sloppy track played to her strengths. They gave her a little time after that race. She came back in another open stakes race in Maryland for her first start off the layoff last month. I thought she ran really well again in the Skip At Stakes. Out there on a 3-wide chase the entire way. Really didn't want to give in through the stretch. She finally weakened at the end of that race and settled for 3rd. But it was a good performance. The runner-up that day, who caught her for 2nd, came back and ran a huge figure in her next start down at Penn National. So I think she faced a good field last time. I think she ran fine considering the layoff. She's got good tactical speed, so she'll be forward in here, but she doesn't need the lead. I think there's a lot to like about Time Limit. Number 7, Bank Sting. She's the horse to beat. Cutting back to 6 for this. Again, I don't really feel like that's going to be a problem for her because she has really good tactical speed. And along those lines, I want to show you we'll show the replay of her most recent start, the Critical Eye, the 1-turn mile, where she did lose as the favorite. She lost to an informed horse and a good horse and Make Mischief, who ran a 99 buyer speed figure in this spot. But Bank Sting we're showing the stretch run of this race, and you're going to see her finish really well at the end of this race. She's making up ground, but it's way too late, and she's only going to be second best in here. But more than anything else, I would say go back and watch the full replay of this race, starting from the break, because Joel Rosario, who took over to ride her in this race, this horse broke fine. She's a good gate horse. She got out of the gate very well. She was forward in this race. And for whatever reason, Rosario decided not to go on with her. Make Mischief went up towards the front with the horse who wound up finishing third, who was cutting the pace. And they went 1-2 basically around the track, while for whatever reason, Rosario took Bank Sting back off the pace. I think he just left her with too much to do in the stretch in there. And she did finish up well. She ran her typical race, a 92 buyer. Her form prior to that was just excellent. Shows up and just runs every single time. Very few bad races on her card. Cutting back to 6, listen, I guess it's something you could worry about, but I think she has plenty of tactical speed to handle it. And I just expect her to be tough to beat right back. She's a really, really good horse. Let Me Take This Call is the 8. Another horse who used to have speed. Doesn't really seem like she has it anymore. She's a 13-time winner. And there was a time, it's not that long ago. I guess you're going back to sort of the end of 2020 and maybe into 2021. At that time, she was running races that would make her a handful in here. She was in really good form at that time, just kept showing up and running fast races and using her speed while doing that. She came back off of a pretty long layoff last October, and she just hasn't won any of her races since they started back at that time. She did catch several wet tracks along the way, and maybe that's enough of an excuse for her. But I don't know, man. She just doesn't seem like she's the same horse anymore. She was off the claim in her most recent start and stepped up in class to a race that she just couldn't win, but she also just didn't run very well at all that day. 2 starts back, she lost to Snicket, who just doesn't seem like a major player in this race. I don't know. She's lost her form. There was a time when she would have been really, really tough in here. It seems like that time has passed. The number 9 is Snicket. She did win back-to-back sprints over this distance back in March and April at Aqueduct. Those were against weaker horses, 1X and 2X allowances versus New York breds last time. She was main track only in a race rained off the turf, and Open Company was nowhere in that race. Even the 2 winning by her speed figures, 2 and 3 back, don't give her much of a chance in here. She's going to need to catch some breaks to win. The 10 is Miss Jimmy. She's far from impossible. Really, really consistent horse. 24 career wins, 10 wins in 10 seconds. She just shows up and runs every time. Done a lot of her damage at Finger Lakes. A lot of her wins have come there, but she's also run very well on this circuit several times over. She won off the layoff at Saratoga last year. That was in wire-to-wire fashion, though, and she can't make the lead in this race. Came right back and won on a sloppy track. Became a stakes winner in the Arctic Queen at Finger Lakes. Second off the layoff here after running an even third in her most recent start. She's a really nice horse, really consistent. I suspect to show up and give a good account of herself in here. I think it's going to be really hard for her to beat this field. But she's a very fair price if you like her. Pretty good race here, though. I think there are, I had it down to basically 4 main contenders in this race, the 1, 2, 6, and 7. They're also probably going to be the shortest prices on the morning line, but they're all really good. I flirted with putting the important one on top because she has dangerous speed in this race, and I do think she's going to outrun this field to the lead early. We'll see if she's going to be able to take this field wire to wire. I do think it's possible. I also have a lot of respect for time limit, but I'm gonna stay with Bank Sting on top. I just think she's a good horse, and I think she got the wrong ride last time, but still ran well in the process. And as opposed to some of the others in here, she's going to be able to sit a comfortable trip in this race. If they do go fast in front of her, she does not need the lead. She proved that a few starts back in that Stallion Series race where she just sat behind a fast pace being set by the important one and ran that horse over in the stretch. She could get a similar trip in this race. She's just a really good horse. She's the favorite in here, but I'm going to take her on top. I went 7-2, 6-1 in the Sunday race of the day. It's the 8th race at Belmont Park, the Dancin Renee for state-bred fillies and mares. The approximate post time is 4:40 Eastern time. Good luck.